If you grew up watching Gilligan's Island, you probably thought you knew every inch of that lagoon. But there is a lot going on in that show that most people walked right past. Here are 25 small details you missed in Gilligan's Island.
Skipper?
Go away, Gilligan.
Number 25. The minnow was a real boat. The yes minnow used in the show was a real vessel, a Wheeler 38 Express cruiser. The name was not chosen randomly. Series creator Sherwood Schwartz named her the Minnow as a deliberate dig at FCC chairman Newton Minow, who had famously called American television a vast wasteland in a 1961 speech to the National Association of Broadcasters. Schwartz found that characterization offensive and decided the best response was to name a sinking boat after the man who said it. It was petty. It was perfect. It is also the kind of joke that you only catch if you know who Newton Minow is, which most of the show's audience did not. 2 different boats were actually used across the run of the series. The primary vessel used for the pilot was a different boat from the one featured in the series itself. The show used what it needed and moved on, which was very much its general approach to continuity.
What are you doing with that?
Oh, the professor made the shellac out of coconut sap and sugar.
Number 24. The skipper's real name was never used on screen. Actor Alan Hale Jr. played the skipper throughout the entire run of the series, but the character's actual full name, Jonas Grumby, was only ever spoken in the original unaired pilot. It was written into the script, appeared in production documents, and then essentially vanished from the show's universe once the series went to air. Most viewers had no idea the skipper had a last name at all, and the show never gave them a reason to wonder about it. He was just the skipper, warm, exasperated, eternally devoted to a first mate who drove him to the edge of sanity on a daily basis. For 3 seasons, that was more than enough characterization. The name Jonas Grumby sounds like it belongs to a character in a Victorian novel, and perhaps the writers quietly agreed.
Mind that, are you sure you saw some people?
Yes, sir, in a boat too. Skipper, we're safe. Just follow me to know exactly where it is.
Number 23. Gilligan's first name was a mystery for decades. For the entire run of the show, Gilligan was referred to only as Gilligan. No first name, no last name, just Gilligan, like Cher, but shipwrecked. Sherwood Schwartz said in later interviews that he had always intended Gilligan to be the character's last name, and that his first name was Willie, making the full name Willie Gilligan. But that was never established anywhere on screen, in any episode, across any of the 3 seasons. Other cast members and writers offered different answers over the years when asked. Bob Denver himself gave varying accounts in different interviews. The character's full name remains, depending entirely on who you ask, either officially unknown or officially Willie Gilligan, a question the show spent 98 episodes deliberately not answering. In some ways, the mystery is more charming than any answer would have been.
Lovey, that mean old chief took away my important top hat.
Number 22. The theme song, originally left out. 2 cast members. When the show premiered on CBS in September 1964, the original theme song, written by Sherwood Schwartz himself, mentioned the skipper and Gilligan by name, referred to the millionaire and his wife by description, and named Ginger by character. The professor and Mary Ann were dismissed in the final line simply as, "and the rest." And the rest, as if they were an afterthought, as if Russell Johnson and Don Wells had shown up to be background furniture in someone else's show. Both actors were understandably unhappy about this, and both made their feelings known. The theme was revised beginning with the 2nd season to include the line, "The Professor and Mary Ann," a small lyrical adjustment that corrected a significant oversight. Wells and Johnson received the on-screen credit they had earned from day one. It took one full season to get there, which by television standards is not the longest anyone has ever waited for recognition, but it is still longer than it should have been.
What are you doing to your dress? I'm making it fit.
Number 21. Tina Louise was promised a different show. Tina Louise, who played the glamorous Hollywood movie star Ginger Grant, signed on to the series under the impression, or at least with the expectation, that she was going to be the lead of a show built substantially around her character. She was a working actress with genuine film credits, and by her own account, she understood the project differently from how it turned out to be. When she arrived on set and found an ensemble comedy with Gilligan and the skipper firmly at the center, and Ginger as one of 7 characters rather than the protagonist, the disappointment registered and did not entirely go away. Cast members and production personnel have described her unhappiness as a recurring presence during filming. Louise herself has given interviews about her time on Gilligan's Island for more than 50 years, and warmth has not always been the predominant quality in those accounts. She is the only original cast member who has consistently declined to participate in reunions.
Howell said what happened.
No, never mind all that now, Gilligan. I sent you over to Mr. Howell with a final plea.
Number 20. The island was filmed in Hawaii, not a studio tank. The lagoon scenes that gave the island its lush, sun-drenched look were shot partly on location and partly on a very convincing lie. For the pilot episode, the production filmed exterior scenes using Kaneohe Bay on the island of Oahu, Hawaii, genuine tropical surroundings that established the visual language of the show. For the series itself, the primary set was constructed on the back lot of CBS Studio Center in Studio City, California. Studio City is in the San Fernando Valley. It is landlocked. It looks nothing like a remote Pacific island from any angle that the cameras were not specifically pointed at. The lagoon was an artificial body of water. The coconut trees were imported and planted. The bamboo huts were built from scratch by the production design team. The lush jungle surrounding the set was carefully arranged to suggest endless tropical wilderness, when in reality, the San Diego freeway was nearby. It worked because the show was warm and quick and funny enough that you never sat back and thought too hard about it.
Gee, isn't it neat? It's a 2-masted schooner, and it's got 2 lifeboats and a binnacle, and look, the pin...
Number 19. Bob Denver almost did not play Gilligan. Before Bob Denver was cast as Gilligan, the role was offered to Jerry Van Dyke, Dick Van Dyke's younger brother. Van Dyke turned it down, reportedly because he did not think much of the concept and was holding out for something with more prestige. He went on to star in My Mother the Car, a 1965 NBC sitcom about a man whose deceased mother is reincarnated as a used automobile. It is consistently listed among the worst television programs ever produced. Denver, who had come off his beloved role as the beatnik Maynard G. Krebs in The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, stepped into Gilligan and brought a genuine warmth and physical gift to the part that made the character impossible not to like. Van Dyke has acknowledged in subsequent interviews that passing on Gilligan's Island was one of the more consequential decisions of his career, and not in the direction he had hoped.
Gilligan, why did you do that?
I just wanted to tell you something.
Number 18. The professor could build anything except a boat. This one was noticed by viewers almost immediately and has since become one of the most affectionately mocked, recurring details in television history. The professor, played by Russell Johnson, was capable of building a radio out of coconut shells, generating electricity from bamboo, manufacturing soap, devising irrigation systems, and solving virtually every crisis the castaways encountered through applied science and sheer ingenuity. He was, by any measure, a genius. And yet, across 3 seasons and 98 episodes, the man never successfully built a boat. He built a Geiger counter. He built a lie detector. He built a telescope. He repaired a phonograph. He never built a raft that actually got anyone off the island. The show's writers understood this perfectly and deliberately avoided addressing it, for the very simple reason that the moment the professor launched a working vessel, the entire premise of the series ceased to exist. So the boat stayed unbuilt, and the audience accepted it because the alternative was no show.
Ginger, that's a splendid idea. We could reenact the sinking of the Minnow.
You mean do it exactly the way it happened?
Well, sure, the wind, the rain.
Number 17. Russell Johnson was a World War II veteran. Russell Johnson, who played the affable, endlessly resourceful professor, had a real-life backstory that the show never touched on, and most viewers had no idea about. Johnson served in World War II as a bombardier in the United States Army Air Forces, flying B-25 Mitchell bombers in the Pacific Theater. He flew 44 combat missions. During the American campaign in the Philippines, his plane was shot down, and he sustained serious injuries in the crash landing. He was awarded the Air Medal and the Purple Heart. He walked with a slight limp for the rest of his life as a direct result of those injuries. So when you watch Russell Johnson solemnly explaining to the skipper why a bamboo and vine contraption is theoretically sound, you are watching a decorated combat veteran exercise extraordinary patience with a fictional situation. The show never mentioned his service. Most of his fans from the Gilligan's Island era had no idea.
Oh, that's mine, Professor. How about this one? Integrated Calculus by Zimmerman.
That's mine.
I knew it wasn't mine.
Number 16. Alan Hale Jr. was the son of a silent film star. Alan Hale Jr., who played the skipper with such complete physical and emotional commitment, came from acting stock. His father, Alan Hale Sr., was a well-known character actor of the silent film era and early talkies, who appeared in dozens of productions and was a regular presence in Errol Flynn adventure films of the 1930s and 1940s. Hale Jr. followed his father into the industry and built a steady career in westerns, dramas, and comedies through the 1950s, before landing the role that would define everything that came after. Unlike some of his castmates, Hale Jr. appears to have genuinely loved being the skipper, not just while the cameras were rolling, but for the rest of his life. He embraced the association warmly, appeared in the reunion television movies, and remained accessible and enthusiastic with fans of the show for decades. He died in January 1990. He was the first of the original main cast to pass away, and those who knew him have consistently described him as exactly what he seemed to be on screen: big-hearted, good-humored, and entirely without pretension.
We better run for our lives. Gilligan!
Ow, you stepped in my foot!
Number 15. Jim Backus was already famous before the show. Jim Backus, who played the gloriously pompous millionaire Thurston Howell III, was already one of the most recognizable voices in American entertainment before he ever set foot on that island set. Since 1949, he had been the voice of Mr. Magoo, the cheerfully oblivious, nearsighted cartoon character who starred in theatrical short films and television specials and won 2 Academy Awards for the studio that produced him. Backus voiced Magoo for decades. He had also appeared in one of the most significant dramatic films of the 1950s, playing James Dean's weak, conflict-avoiding father in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955, a performance that held its own in a film that also featured Dean and Natalie Wood. By 1964, he was a versatile, experienced actor who brought genuine comic authority to Thurston Howell III, and the character became one of the most enduring things about the show.
Yes, you see, I was sewing on a dress, and Gilligan came in and he thought he was Charles Boyer.
Oh, good for him.
When then the skipper came in and he thought...
Number 14. Natalie Schafer hid her real age throughout the series. Natalie Schafer, who played the magnificently oblivious society matron Lovey Howell, was one of the more privately guarded members of the cast when it came to personal history. She was famously secretive about her age throughout her career, believed to have been born around 1900, which would have put her in her mid-60s when the show premiered in 1964, though she discouraged any public confirmation of that figure with considerable determination. The story that has followed Schafer through decades of Gilligan's Island lore is that she agreed to appear in the pilot specifically because she expected it to go nowhere and she wanted a free trip to Hawaii. When the show was picked up and ran for 3 seasons, she made her peace with the situation and delivered Lovey Howell with consistent comic precision. The oblivious privilege, the cheerful uselessness, the absolute refusal to acknowledge that anything about her circumstances was unusual. She continued working into her 80s and died in April 1991, having spent the last chapter of her career defined by a role she had accepted, at least initially, as a vacation.
Your Highness Gillian, this is King Kalawani, Emperor of Night. Yes, we know.
Number 13. The show was canceled without warning. Gilligan's Island was not canceled because of low ratings or a fading audience. By the time CBS pulled the plug in 1967 after 3 seasons, the show was still performing respectably and had every reason to expect a 4th year. What ended it was not the viewers, but the corporate politics of a television network. CBS President William S. Paley's wife, Babe Paley, was a devoted fan of Gunsmoke, the long-running Western that had been moved out of its 8 p.m. Saturday time slot to make room for Gilligan's Island. She wanted Gunsmoke back. William Paley, who ran one of the most powerful broadcasting companies in the country, gave his wife what she wanted. Sherwood Schwartz has recounted this story in interviews for decades, each time with the particular tone of a man who has made a certain peace with something he will never entirely forgive. The cast and crew, by several accounts, learned the show was finished through the press before anyone from CBS told them directly.
We're gonna take off now. Shh. I think I hear somebody coming. Quiet, Gilligan.
Huh?
Number 12. The castaways never tried to signal passing ships consistently. Throughout the run of the series, ships passed near the island, aircraft flew overhead, and the outside world made its presence felt on a fairly regular basis. More regular, in fact, than you would expect for a location that was supposedly so remote that no one had found the castaways in years. In episodes where a rescue attempt was the central plot, the passing vessel was central to the story, and Gilligan's accidental interference with the signal fire or the flare gun was the source of the comedy. But in the background of episodes where rescue was not the point, passing ships and low-flying aircraft appeared in shots without anyone on the beach reacting to them at all. The castaways' collective desperation to be found was apparently conditional on whether the script required them to be desperate that week. The island's geography shifted based on narrative need. Remote and unreachable one episode, apparently situated in a busy shipping lane the next. The show hoped audiences would not track this too closely. Audiences tracked it lovingly for 60 years.
And you tell us in your own sweet, charming, simple way what it is that you want.
Number 11. Dawn Wells kept Marianne's wardrobe. Dawn Wells, who played the warm, grounded, endlessly practical Marianne Summers, was by most accounts the cast member who most fully embraced what Gilligan's Island meant to the people who loved it. She attended fan conventions, gave generous interviews, wrote about her experiences, and spoke about the show with genuine affection, rather than complicated feelings for decades after it ended. She kept items from Marianne's wardrobe, the gingham top, the shorts that became iconic, as mementos of a production that had clearly meant something to her. She also kept her connection to the audience, understanding that for many viewers, particularly those who grew up watching the show in afternoon reruns through the 1970s and 1980s, Marianne was not just a television character, but a genuine piece of their childhood. Wells passed away in December 2020 at the age of 82. The response from fans who had grown up with her was immediate and heartfelt.
Breathtakingly beautiful.
Oh, Gilligan.
And your eyes are limpid pools of indigo blue.
Oh, Gilligan.
Number 10. The pilot episode had a different cast. The pilot episode of Gilligan's Island, filmed in 1963 as a presentation to sell the series to CBS, looked noticeably different from the show that eventually went to air, and not just in set design or production polish. The cast was substantially different. Kit Smythe played a character named Bunny, a secretary, who did not survive the transition to series. Nancy McCarthy played a version of what would become Ginger, but also as a secretary rather than a glamorous movie star. John Gabriel played the intellectual character who would eventually become the professor, referred to in the pilot under a different name entirely. The three characters most remembered alongside Gilligan and the skipper, Ginger as a movie star, Mary Ann as a farm girl, and the professor as a research scientist, were all reconceived between the pilot and the series order. Tina Louise, Dawn Wells, and Russell Johnson were cast fresh for the series. None of them are in the original pilot. If you have ever seen it, the show it became feels like a considerable improvement.
So bad, was it?
No, that wasn't so bad. It wasn't bad. It was horrible.
All right, now, Gilligan.
Number 9. Sherwood Schwartz had to fight to cast Bob Denver. When Sherwood Schwartz proposed Bob Denver for the role of Gilligan, CBS pushed back. The network wanted a name with more marquee value, someone whose presence would give the show a promotional advantage. Schwartz held firm, arguing that Denver was exactly right for the character in ways that a more conventional television star would not be. He eventually won the argument. What Denver brought to Gilligan was something that cannot be manufactured, a genuine quality of being both lovable and impossible, sympathetic and maddening, completely well-intentioned and reliably disastrous. His face could telegraph an entire sequence of thoughts in a second. His physical comedy was rooted in something real rather than performed, and crucially, you never stopped rooting for him even after the 14th time he accidentally knocked the radio into the lagoon. Schwartz later said in interviews that insisting on Denver was one of the best decisions he made for the series, and watching the show, it is genuinely hard to imagine anyone else doing what Denver did with that character.
Now, Skipper, I want you to go back to a time before you were hit over the head.
Number 8. The island set was destroyed by a real storm. The elaborate outdoor set constructed on the CBS Studio Center backlot, the artificial lagoon, the bamboo huts, the carefully arranged tropical vegetation, was partially destroyed by a severe rainstorm during the show's production run. The damage required substantial reconstruction work before filming could continue. The incident was not part of the show's official publicity, and it was not widely reported at the time. Crew members who worked on the series referenced it in retrospective interviews over the years, describing it as a significant disruption that the production absorbed and moved past. The rebuilt set was a faithful recreation of the original, but not an exact duplicate. And viewers who pay close attention to the background details in episodes from different seasons can detect subtle differences in the lagoon's shape, the placement of the huts, and the density of the surrounding foliage. Most viewers watching casually would never notice. Most viewers watching casually were not looking at the trees.
You're cured.
Huh? Yeah, I'm not a radio anymore.
Well, congratulations.
Number 7. The radio kept working, despite no power source. One of the most persistent background details that attentive viewers quietly noticed was the castaways' transistor radio, which kept right on functioning throughout the series, delivering news from the mainland and the occasional musical interlude as though it were plugged into a wall socket in a comfortable living room somewhere. A transistor radio of the early 1960s ran on standard batteries. Batteries run out. On an uninhabited tropical island with no supply lines, replacement batteries would be essentially impossible to come by. The show never addressed this. Not once across 3 seasons and 98 episodes was battery life raised as a concern, a plot point, or even a passing worry. The radio simply worked because the writers needed a mechanism for the outside world to reach the island, and asking where the power was coming from would have broken the spell. Most viewers accepted this without question. A small and apparently persistent subset of viewers did not, and they have been bringing it up in conversations about the show ever since.
I give up, Marianne. I can't seem to get the spots out of this. Oh, here, Ginger, let me try it. Thanks.
Number 6. Ginger's wardrobe made no logistical sense. Ginger Grant arrived on the 3-hour tour wearing a sequined evening gown. She was taking a casual afternoon boat trip from Honolulu Harbor, and she showed up in a full-length sequined gown. This is not something the show ever acknowledged or explained, and it set the tone for everything that followed. As the series progressed, Ginger continued to appear in a rotating wardrobe of glamorous evening gowns, coordinated accessories, and impractical footwear that no human being could have packed for an afternoon excursion on a small charter boat. New outfits appeared from episode to episode with no explanation of where they came from or how they survived the shipwreck. The show never addressed any of this because addressing it would have required either a logical answer the writers didn't have or changing what Ginger looked like, which would have changed what the character was. Tina Louise was playing a Hollywood movie star, and a Hollywood movie star in a grass skirt or practical cargo wear was not the Ginger Grant the show needed, so the gowns kept appearing, and the audience kept not asking about them, and it worked out fine for everyone.
I have been doing research on animal transference. I've changed the dog into a cat.
Skipper, we were right. A dog does go.
Number 5. Several notable guest stars appeared on the island. Despite being stranded on a remote and supposedly uncharted island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the castaways received a remarkable number of visitors over the course of 3 seasons, which says something either about the island's location or about the flexibility of the show's writers. Guest stars included Phil Silvers, Zaza Gabor, and Hans Conried, among others. Most notably, a 1966 episode featured a young Kurt Russell playing a character named Kenny Howell, appearing as Thurston Howell III's nephew, who somehow finds the island. Russell was around 15 years old at the time and already working steadily as a child actor before the career that would eventually include films like Escape from New York, The Thing, and Tombstone. The episode is one of his earliest television appearances. The guest star format was a practical solution to a creative problem. It let the writers introduce new dynamics and storylines without ever having to address the fundamental question of why nobody on the island had gone home yet.
Mela, Dosturiensky, Rasoli, Maya Potenska.
In Amerikansky Dombelski.
Number 4. Bob Denver did his own physical comedy stunts. Bob Denver performed the vast majority of Gilligan's physical comedy himself. The tumbles, the pratfalls, the accidental collisions with the skipper, and the general full-body punishment that the character absorbed in nearly every episode across 3 seasons. The show's approach to slapstick was genuinely old-fashioned in the best possible sense, rooted in the traditions of Buster Keaton and Laurel and Hardy. Physical comedy that worked because the performer was fully committed to it and never broke to check whether the audience was watching. Denver was committed. He reportedly sustained a variety of minor injuries during production and said little about them. There was no theatrical distance between Bob Denver and the bumbling that Gilligan got up to. He threw himself into it, sometimes quite literally, and the character's clumsiness felt authentic rather than performed because the man playing him was doing it for real.
Lovey! Oh, they're back!
Oh, good!
That means the wedding's on again, and doesn't the bride look beautiful?
Number 3. The show has never been off the air since 1964. Gilligan's Island premiered on CBS on September the 26th, 1964, and has been in syndication somewhere in the United States in an almost unbroken line ever since, which means the show has now been running continuously in one form or another for over 60 years. That is an extraordinary lifespan for a situation comedy that was canceled after 3 seasons. Generations of American children who had no idea the show had originally aired in the 1960s grew up watching it in afternoon reruns through the 1970s, 1980s, and into the 1990s, absorbing the characters and the format as though they were timeless rather than vintage. 3 television reunion movies followed the original run. Rescue from Gilligan's Island in 1978, which reunited most of the original cast and drew enormous ratings. The Castaways on Gilligan's Island in 1979, and the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island in 1981, which is exactly what it sounds like. An animated series, The New Adventures of Gilligan, ran from 1974 to 1977. The 98 original episodes have never needed rebooting, reimagining, or updating. They found an audience in 1964 and have never entirely lost it.
He's already fired 2 shots, which means he has only 4 bullets left. Well, then all we have to do is jump him and take his gun.
Number 2, Sherwood Schwartz embedded a social experiment into the show. Sherwood Schwartz has said in multiple interviews across the decades that Gilligan's Island was conceived with a specific social idea embedded in its premise, one that he took seriously even if the show's comedic surface made it easy to miss. 7 people from completely different social and economic backgrounds, stripped of all the structures that normally organize American life, forced to live together and solve problems as a community. The millionaire cannot buy his way home. The movie star's fame is useless in a jungle. The professor's education cannot fix everything. The farm girl and the working sailors are as valuable to the group's survival as anyone else. Schwartz saw it as a kind of gentle demonstration that the divisions Americans took for granted. Class, money, status, fame meant nothing when the situation was reduced to its essentials. He intended it seriously. The show delivered it in the form of coconut cream pies and hat-related mishaps. Whether the audience absorbed the underlying idea along with the comedy is something Schwartz himself said he never knew for certain.
She really can't, Skipper. She can.
Oh, Gilligan, maybe you had something there.
Well, let's find out.
Number 1, the show was rejected multiple times before CBS picked it up. Before Gilligan's Island became a television institution that has now been running continuously for over 60 years, Sherwood Schwartz could not get anyone to take it seriously. He developed the concept in the early 1960s and was turned down repeatedly before CBS agreed to produce a pilot. The network's enthusiasm was not overwhelming even then. They had concerns about the premise, the cast, and the viability of a show built around people who were perpetually stranded and never rescued. The pilot was filmed. The audience testing produced mixed results. CBS went ahead anyway, reportedly because of internal advocates who believed the concept had legs. The first season proved them right. The show ran 3 seasons, was canceled for reasons entirely unrelated to its performance, and then entered syndication, where it found audience after audience for generation after generation. The animated spin-off ran 2 seasons, 3 reunion television movies were made, and the 98 original episodes are still airing somewhere right now, which is more than most television shows that were canceled in 1967 can say. Gilligan's Island was never trying to be anything more than a funny, warm, gently ridiculous show about 7 people stuck on an island. And somehow, in being exactly that, it became something people have never stopped watching. The small details, the backstage stories, the casting decisions that almost went differently, they make the show a little richer without taking anything away from what it always was. 60 years later, the theme song is still immediately recognizable to anyone who grew up in America in the last half-century. That is not something that happens by accident, and it does not happen to shows that were just filling time. Gilligan's Island mattered to people. It still does. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe. There is a lot more television history where this came from.